Hey, welcome to Appthropology, the podcast where we chat with the people behind awesome mobile apps. We'll look to understand the biggest lessons they've learned, bringing value to people, and we'll dive into interesting stories and insights about how they build and who they build for. So today, this week, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Thomas Lahardy. He's VP of Marketing at Tonser, which is a football community app for next-generation footballers. In Danish, Tonser means a player who plays from the heart and wants to succeed. How's that for a fun fact? Paul just put that in my notes for everyone who's listening, so I didn't know that before. I just read that. It's nice. Why I'm especially excited this week is because of Thomas's history. So Thomas worked his way up relatively quickly from an account manager to a director of innovation and growth at Headway Digital, and then made his shift to a little company named Amazon, serving as the director of acquisition for the Audible product. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of that one. Nice little app there. So I can't wait to probe and understand the differences between working at such an incredibly huge monster company and app, and how you've taken those experiences and applied them to Tonser, which appears to be growing quickly, I might add. So Thomas, first of all, I have to ask, I noticed in your experience on LinkedIn, you said you were a rugby coach. So was moving to Tonser like a passion project or going back to your roots in some way?
I mean, I love football. I have to confess that I love rugby even more. And I used to coach. I was in a boarding school, so that's how I kind of went into rugby, because it's weird for a Belgian guy also to love that. And then you see me through a video and camera, but if you see me like in reality, I'm quite small, quite thin. So impossible to say that I'm a rugby fan. But I don't know, nothing I can do about that. I love it. Going to the World Cup in 2023. I think I have 10 games or so. And so I think like most kids, or at least a big percentage of kids, I always wanted to be a football player before even knowing about rugby. And so when I had the opportunity to join Tonser and, to work in football, also with kids, young players, having that education part in work, I was like, okay, that's the chance of my life. And so I didn't really think twice. That was a massive opportunity for me, and I have to confess that it's great to work every day in the football industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. We were talking a little bit before I hit the record button that I've practiced so hard, but to translate for our American audience, we're talking about soccer. So I had to get that clarification out there.
You guys are
from the American
speakers,
side. We
right?
don't have much rugby. Yeah.
No, you have what you
English,
call football, right?
Mm-hmm.
No,
I was educated.
I'm the French speaker, but if you translate directly football, I'll let you guys do the translation, right? But for me, it's quite obvious that European football is the real football. Then we can debate. I'm fine, but
yeah,
got us there. You've got us there.
Yeah, I used to work at a company. I had a boss who was from the UK, and so he always called it proper football. So I was always corrected that it was proper football as opposed to American football, which I guess makes us improper football. Yeah,
that makes you American football.
There you go. Can you give us let's take a quick step back. So for those who are listening who don't know Tonser, can you give us a little background on the app and what it is?
Yeah, first, I'm quite impressed that you knew about the meaning of Tonser. Paul, I think it's way better than me. I didn't even know that when I did my interview, so maybe I should contact you next time. So Tonser, you almost said it all. It's a social plus platform community, and we try to unlock some real-life opportunity for young amateur football players that most of the time don't have access to those opportunities, because football, proper football, is a specific world. You have maybe, I would say top of mind, a bit more than 50K professional players, and they have everything around them, right? So it's a super powered, connected environment. They have access to anything you can imagine. And then in parallel, you have, I think, more than 100 million amateur football players that live in a complete disconnected and unempowered environment and ecosystem. And so you have so many talents that don't even have access to any type of opportunity. And that's where we want to make a difference, and that's where we want to create a bit more equality and mobility around football, grassroots football.
I think.
And just to be clear, does it the scouting, does it happen at all the levels? It's not just like Premier League level.
No. It's all levels. So you have, let's say that you have different steps when you use the app. So the first thing with the app that we have for the users is that as a football player, you will use the app by filling your stats. And then you have a lot of casual gaming mechanics where you have leaderboards, team of the week. You can compare, you can see how your team is doing in the league. You can compare yourself with other player with the same position in the league, in other league. So there is all that professionalization of your football experience, let's say. And then you also evolve in a journey when you fill your stats. So the more you fill your stats, the more you play games, the more you fill it with content, with video and so on, the more you advance in a journey. And at some point you enter in the scout zone. And there we try to create physical opportunities as well with professional clubs partner that we have. So a few weeks ago, if you're looking for that on LinkedIn, you will see that we organized a national showcase in France, which is our main market now, where we had 64 kids playing in front of 17 professional clubs with big names in there, like AC Milan or Leipzig, PSG was there. So it's big names. And so that's a type of physical opportunity that we try to unlock for them.
Yeah. It's fascinating. A few years ago, I read this book called The Away Game by Sebastian Abbott. It's a journalist, and it's basically he tracks this program called Football Dreams, specifically looking at like young boys and football players in Africa, and how they've kind of, because the world of scouting has gotten wider and wider, where it's, not just Argentina and Brazil anymore, but Africa, and you've got clubs in Dubai and Qatar, and just it's really amazing how this is quite a global industry. But that process of scouting, and there's so much, it's just all of the manual and the personalities and everything else. And then you look at kind of enabling a technology to be distributed in a way that young people around the world, wherever they are, can kind of somehow participate and contribute to their ability to be discovered. But also, I think the key point you made just now is also the professionalization that happens before that. Even absent the scouting, that has a lot of value. Like I played all the way up through college on a kind of, some of the competitive teams where I grew up. And just that experience, and just kind of making yourself a better player, and being able to do a little bit of comparison. I think that you nicely described as professionalization. I think it's pretty amazing. It's really nice.
And there is maybe, didn't go into details, but there is another part with more than the app. It's also the off-app community, the content that we start creating on social media, and then how we will link that content into the app and exclusive content in the app. And there we also want to, because for us, opportunity is not just going pro, right? If you look at a football player pyramid, you would have the top of the pyramid with aspirational pro football player that have the ability and the capacity to really go pro. But then you have all the rest of the football player that just want to have a better experience in their football. They want to feel it's a bit more professionalized, a bit more, in the end, up to date, right? With all the tools that you have now. And so how can we also create opportunities through content? It could be any type of video series, partnership with pro players, with other health company, make them understand how they should, or how they could live their passion of football with, trainings, schools, how they should approach any tough topic that we have now in the digital world, harassment, racism, So all of it. So we really want to go broad when we talk about offering more opportunity. It's not just go pro. It could also be some connection with influencers, social visibility, work with brands, anything. We don't close any doors if it can lead to an actual opportunity for someone.
I like that you guys
Very
often
nice.
feature in your social media specific individuals too. So I've noticed that, and I think even on your website right now you have a feature for a person. So I love that you surface those people who otherwise would have never been seen, right, if they didn't have an opportunity with Tonsor. So I think that community aspect is really strong, and you guys do a great job with it.
Yeah, and to be honest, we have so many untold stories, and I think we need to be better at that, because we're a small team, we did amazing stuff, but we need to aim for more, and we have a lot of success stories from players. And Paul, I think you asked the question at the beginning. It's not just Premier League level. Like, you can leave from football at a lot of different levels. We have also some stories about coaches that help those kids. So it's more than Premier League football, right? Premier League football is maybe the ultimate dream for most of the players. It's more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, one other just quick plug about that, because it's a great illustration if anyone's listening and cares about this stuff. But there's a great show, Welcome to Wrexham, about, by the way, two Americans who buy a club in Wales. And it's sort of like there's a stack of pro leagues and then semi-pro leagues, and they're at the bottom and trying to work their way up. But there's a lot of individual stories there about players who just really, they just love playing, right? They're not necessarily ever going to play in the Premier League, but the opportunity to continue to play and the value to the community that team provides. I think it's a really nice illustration of what's going on here and why this community aspect and why again, you put it really nicely, expanding the opportunity set for your life to involve football, for, you to continue to explore a passion that you developed maybe as a child. I think that's just really nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I want to tap on something really quick. So I set this up kind of two ways. One, you just mentioned you had a very small team. You have so many stories to share in such a small team now. So I would love to compare and contrast what you're doing now with what you had at Amazon, because I think there's a lot of people who are at smaller apps. Tonsor's growing quite a bit, and you have, 500K downloads on Google Play, so it's not necessarily small. But coming from the Audible Amazon experience is quite different. And I know a lot of people wish they had the tools that the big guys had, right? Or the opportunities or the teams or all that stuff. So I'm curious, what are the biggest differences you've seen between running marketing at Audible, being in such a big position at such a big app at Audible, compared to running marketing at Tonsor? A very open-ended question.
Yeah, because you have many, and I think you have pro and cons in both, right? So I think probably the biggest difference is the budget. I cannot disclose any number from Amazon, otherwise I would have big issues. But budget-wise, it's another world, obviously, and so budgets dictates a lot of things, right? So all the strategy is dictated by that, but it has also pro and cons. So the fact that you don't have a big budget forces you to be more agile, smarter. Every action that you take, every investment needs to come with results. You need, one of my old CEO was telling me, you need to fail fast and cheap. So that's exactly that. So you don't have the luxury of, sleeping on your tests, basically. But the big pro for me is that you have much more flexibility to test, actually, and to really test. When I mean test, is like try something completely new. So the first thing that I was able to do when I joined, and I was a dream since 10 years in paid marketing, growth, and so on, was to cut all paid activities for more than a month, and then see what is your actual organic baseline. And when you work in a company like Amazon or others, like it was really the first time that I was able to do that, you cannot do that because you're part of a bigger monster. So you have strategical decision to take. You need to work on strategy, but you need to have impact from day one because your targets are part of something bigger than your product, your country, your region, even. And so that's for me probably the biggest difference. And so that experience of cutting paid is crazy. You see the cannibalization, but I also understand that you will never be able to do that in a company like Audible, Amazon, or Joker, where I was before, because if you have strong targets, if you need to grow, and obviously everyone wants to grow, so it's nothing bad around that. The fastest lever that you have is paid marketing. So in my opinion, and it's super personal, everyone relies way too much on paid marketing. So if you look at channel mix of companies, it's not efficient. It's driven by the targets. And so joining a company like Dancer and having the control on that type of, or the flexibility on those tests was a massive learning for me. It was like maybe an assumption that you have since years working in paid or digital marketing or acquisition. That was the first time that I could actually validate it. And I'm sure that if I do that in another company, I will have different results. So again, it's just like testing and reporting and analyzing. But for us, you see that there is a big part of cannibalization.
Oh, we had I learned a new word from the data scientists, which is counterfactual. So I'm waiting for Paul to smile because to me, it's one of those, we don't test enough of not doing something to understand what's working. To your example, we don't shut off paid. Why not? I think a lot of times it's driven by fear because this is what we do. And what if we do, then all of a sudden the doors are going to slam shut and things like that. So people don't often test that. We had another chat with the data scientist who said, what if we didn't put the bathroom signs? Like he was joking about, like, I should put bathroom signs all over the office saying the bathroom's over here, it's this way. And then we now attribute people going to the bathroom with these signs that I hung, when obviously the signs I hung have nothing to do with people actually going to the bathroom. They were always going to go to the bathroom. We just, those signs are the paid ads basically, right? We're doing something that we feel is important. So I understand, that results are different, obviously, when you turn off paid at anywhere different. But were there any kind of interesting insights that came up? Did you find some channels working better than others, or some just were no change?
So to be honest with you, the team had done an amazing job before I joined on the brand, building the community, having something like really strong in the markets where we were like established. Something that was not there at all was the tracking part, which obviously is for me one more reason to not spend anything in paid, because you can actually not really track properly. So you can see a few things, but again, if you don't stop everything, you don't see the real correlation between what you launch on which platform and so on. So that was the first thing to do. And so I think the first 3 months when I've joined, we did something that I call brilliant at the basics, which is strengthening your foundations before taking any action on investing money. If you are, you don't have amazing, like a huge budget and so on. So you need to be sure that your foundations are solid, and then every action that you will take or every spend that you will make reflects on your channel mix, and that you can understand which action did what, basically. Because you will always have cannibalization, you will always have things that you don't want to see. But again, if the output is bigger than the input, So I don't know if it answers directly your question or not, but happy to continue on the topic. But even before talking about paid, it was just fixing the foundations, because the brand was super strong. The internal reporting, the view of the channel mix, the view of your funnel, so the consistency after all the brand activities inside of the app, the CRM, setup.
And what's so tell us a little bit more about that. When you say establish the foundations, how much are you talking about putting tools in place versus sort of setting up processes versus clarifying metrics or KPIs or objectives? I'm sure it's some combination of these, but tell us more about the composition.
It is actually, I remember that I split that in 3 pillars. So the first one was purely tracking and understanding your channel mix. Just to put like one word on that, it's a bit more complex than that, but channel mix to full funnel, be sure that the message that you want to display at a specific time is the right one, that you have brand consistency all along the way. So let's say the tracking part was one. Then I had the communication one, and the communication one is both internal and external. So it's everything related to reporting. You need, in my opinion, to set up weekly reporting to specific audience in the company to force synergies also with the company. So I'm a big believer of, and that's not my word, I heard that word recently, producting, which is a mix of product marketing and marketing. And I thought that the guy was like 100% right. You need to work hands in hand, product and marketing. And I think when I was doing interviews like a year or two ago, I had a shocking question, someone asking me, how do you do to manage the war between marketing and product? And I'm like, what war? And so if you don't have those internal communication processes, you don't force the synergies, because people are working in their thing, and then you end up working with a lot of silos, and you lose a lot of efficiency. For a brand and a marketing team, you probably lose consistency. We still don't have a real CRM setup. So to the tool part, it's something that we have in the pipe, but probably for June, July. And so it's all about prioritization in the end. So we have a massive pipe of things to improve. We are also launching new countries. And so we also need to do that with the amount of people that we have. So that also comes in the priority. And then on top of that, we have then the rest. But our product team is doing a great job at the moment at communicating with the users. So we have a player experience team that takes care of that. And so they do a super good job. But the segmentation is thought product-wise, not marketing-wise. And so we need to create those synergies to work more together and to be more efficient. In the end, it's all about efficiency, especially with a small team. And so the pillar were content tracking and I think I forgot the third one, which is a bad sign. The content, most important one. The content one. So we have so many source of content. You were talking about the user stories. We needed to clarify a little bit this and see then how do you translate the story that you get into actual content. And the other part of it is like you have so many platforms. And I think something that was not that efficient is that we were using all the platform with all the formats for all the purposes. But if you have like a small budget, and you need to be sure that your message is delivered and that you're using the right platform for the right moment or the right part of your funnel. I will just use names for the example, but what's the point of using all the format on TikTok, all the format on Snapchat, all the format on Instagram, all the format on YouTube, on Facebook for your awareness part, consideration part, conversion part, loyalty part? That doesn't make sense. So again, if you have a view of your full funnel, and if you need, and you should do the exercise, if you need one platform to deliver one message and one part of the funnel, which one would it be? And then you advance like this, and then you start prioritizing also the content that you create for that purpose in the end.
Can we dive deeper a little? Because I think you said something, but so subtly, I don't know if we really captured it. What is your view of what content is about? Because I think a simple superficial view would just be like, oh, it's an ad or it's creative, and maybe like it's telling you why the sponsor app is good. But what is your deeper view of what actually content is?
So for me, it's everything almost. Like I've used that word before inside Tonsors. Like for me, content is overarching everything. So if you look at your funnel, the content is above the funnel and it's everywhere. So it should be the link between everything. And then you can put that in parallel with your channel mix, whether it's organic, paid, influencer, ads, whatever, and then everything coming from your app, so CRM, referral, and so on. So you will have content everywhere. You have content on your website, on your store, on your app, on your social media. So content, it's not just an ad, right? It's your brand, it's you, it's your DNA almost. And so it's very important that you understand why you're creating content and where do you need to display that content.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what your view is here. I mean, I've had this growing thesis that ultimately every app is really a content app. And if I think about Tonsor, right, I think about ultimately what these players care about is the story. It's their story and the story they aspire to and the story, that is right next to them that they can compare themselves with, hopefully in a productive, useful way, right? But ultimately it's the story that's generated by the usage of the app. Like, I did this, I accomplished this, other people accomplished that. It's that.
Yeah.
And then the snippets of it, like, and kind of turning it around and sort of saying, like, this is what, this is the path you're on, or this is what you've accomplished. Like, the richness is sort of taking that behavior and turning it into story, which ultimately is really just content.
Yeah. And that so just to jump on your example, even for the users, the content that they want to see would be very different inside of the app or outside of the app. So inside of the app, you need to start thinking of product-led growth strategies. How do you create content from the app that the player wants to use, share, show, as you said? But then when it's outside of the app, how you as a brand are doing shoot out for the players, so the user stories and so on, the thing that you mentioned. So that was my point, that everything should be related to content, but also to your funnel. So if you're in the app, if you're on your social, if you're on one of the platform, if you're on the ad space, it's different. You need to think it different. And so that's also why, for me, when you don't have a lot of budget, you need to be smart and you need to translate the right content for the right moment, for the right user, for the right purpose, basically.
Yeah.
And then it's also something different for LinkedIn. If you put the B2B into the mix, then
yeah, that's right, because you've got the whole your coach, your scout and club side as well.
Yeah.
But okay, so I think, Jim, you were anyway going to go in this direction. But if I can lead us, or just sort of segue there, before we kind of talk a little bit about the tool stack, specifically for content, because the content has to be different for each channel, for each part of the funnel, for each part of the player lifecycle. Any thoughts there about, because a lot of times when people think about the tool stack, they're thinking about, like, I need to set up my analytics, I need to set up my tracking, I need to set up my CRM, the pipes, etc. But then I don't often hear a lot of stuff around content. What is your experience there? Any favorite tools or kind of gaps there? What do you, when you're thinking about all that different forms of content, and how you, because is it just really ultimately a Google Doc or a Google Sheet with different ideas, or what else is there?
Yeah, it's such a wide question, but so for the tools and related to content, it will depend on when in the funnel do you need that tool. So for me, the CRM tools would be very different than any type of social media tool that will either help you to create different type of content, localizing or create different version of one hero content, or analyzing the colors of your content versus the color of another ad. So the tools that you would use for the ad space that you would use on social to also all the social listening parts, the mention, the thing, and then what you use on CRM are completely different for me. So they should not even be compared, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that was your question or not, but then we can talk about one specific area. And it's true that on the CRM part, I haven't used the tool that gives me satisfaction content-wise. So you usually have nice features to communicate, to segment, which is what you need to look for in the first place. But it's true that I haven't used a tool that help you scale the type of messages, if you consider message a content, and then when you open, how can you test 10 types of content directly? And when I say test, it's even create those content, right? So because you could do it manually and do all those things, but then you have probably 10 companies that can do the same. So I don't have a standout tool in mind when it comes to content for CRM, for instance. Actually, I don't have any standout tool. If I want to be honest,
that's good insight.
You need tools. Don't get me wrong, but I think
it's a gap. It's a gap.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that too. I think with some of the content generation, you're understanding because you have a similar problem. So I was just looking at the stuff from Shop Talk and AI generative tools. Everyone's abuzz with like Chat GPT and all the GPT stuff, and you can make, and to your point, you have a ton of stories, you have a ton of videos, you have a lot. It's not always the content creation that's the problem. It's the distribution, because to your point, I could put everything on every platform, right? I don't have the resources to do that. I need to do something that makes sense. And similarly, my user base wouldn't tolerate that, just getting spammed with 100 messages a day, right? It's got to be the right ones. So yeah, it seems to be a pretty common problem.
What would be great actually for that would be to find, it probably exists, but a tool that would localize one hero content to the right format with the right dynamic for the different platform that you're using, for instance. So I'll take a bad example, but let's say that you do a 15 minutes high-end content, story-oriented on YouTube. Now, how can you input that in a tool and then it serves you a lot of snippets for TikTok and then something specific for Instagram and then both static and video, you can have carousel. And so that would be amazing. It probably exists. I don't know. I need to spend more time in looking for tools, which is not the priority now, but it will come. But that would be something I would really look forward to have, actually.
I feel like I've seen a couple of those, but I feel like behind the scenes there's really just a lot of people doing it kind of manually. Well, because I'll look, but I think because some of it too, if you think of like a wide format YouTube and then you go to like a narrow format TikTok, so you end up with like these horribly formatted, because it's like, where's the center of the screen? Somebody's off kit. So yeah, I will look though. If I find it, I will look. I was going to ask on the tool side, just because I'm curious. So budget aside, is there anything that you had at Amazon and Audible that you don't have now that you missed, like from a tool or resource perspective, not a budget?
At Amazon, no, because everything was internal, or most of the tools were internal because of Amazon, and all the struggles that you may have sharing data integration and so on. So we used to have a lot of internal tools. The last one that I actually liked, it might seem weird for you, I was a joker, was Braze, because now we work with another tool, which in my opinion for all CRM activities and segmentation and A/B testing and so on is way less efficient. So top of mind, I would say that. Unfortunately, at Amazon, it was really internal, and to be honest, it was also a struggle for the onboarding, because I think that was probably the hardest part when joining. It's like you need to relearn tools from scratch with new acronyms that don't mean anything. So you basically learning another language while learning another job. So no tools top of mind from them.
No, that makes sense. We heard, we're working with a few data scientists who kind of said the same thing. Our team was looking at developing this internally, and then once we get like 2 months into it, we're like, what are we doing? We could just buy this, and the cost would be, better. But to your point, when you internal doesn't mean better. Internally developed half the time can be worse in a lot of ways.
No, then it's always the matter of having the resources to do the integration, to do the all the QA at the beginning. But once the integration is done, and when you spend the time and you got onboarding on the tool, you have super nice tool that are actually built for that. So right, it's their job. They're there for that. So it's their expertise as well. So in my opinion, when you try to develop that type of things internally, it's not the way the good way to go. But again, I understand why we had that at Amazon, but I would not advise every company to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah, not everybody has that level of resources. So let me spin that a different way though. So tools aside, what best practices did you kind of take from Amazon that you carried forward at Tonster now?
A lot, actually. It was a super nice, cool. I really like that, and that's actually what I was looking to get when I joined. And I would say that it's everything around processes. So again, when working at Amazon, it's sometimes a bit frustrating, and you wish that you had less processes. But going in a new company with a new role, you have the choice to bring the one that you like, and I think they're really good. Those processes are there. The company is rocking, and they make things efficient, clean, clear. And if I need to be a bit more specific, it's probably all the weekly format that we had, and be sure that all your meetings, all your reportings are connected. So you don't do something just once for one shot for one presentation. Everything is reused and interconnected. So a bit like what we were discussing between teams and synergies, how can you have the same mindset in your week dynamic, if that makes sense? Between you start your week with the priorities, you do a specific type of reporting, and then the most important for me is the part of insights and actions. Everything, every meeting, every report needs to come with insights and actions. So you need to update someone, always another team, management, stakeholder, but then you need to have actions as well. How do you turn your red matrix into green? That should always be the focus in everything that you're doing. And that's probably the part I like the most. So joining companies with less structure, it's, I think now by default, the first thing that I do. It's trying to bring the one that I like.
That's good. I think
nice. There's that old saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I always kind of extend it and sort of say process eats plans for lunch, because a plan, a lot of times we focus on the plan, but then reality breaks the plan, and you learn a lot, right? But if you have a process which is kind of just gives you that, okay, how did we come up with the plan? How do we implement it? How do we learn, right? But there's some rhythm to it that you can then follow over and over and over again that lets you kind of correct plans. I mean, and then that's why process ends up being so important.
Yeah,
it's because it lives so much longer than a plan.
Yeah, and back to one of the points that we discussed earlier is like the test fast and cheap. So when you have a process in place, you can also be sure that you review what you need to review at the right time, right? So Otherwise, you go on your next priority and your next ping on Slack or email, and then you forget about something, and then a week after you don't have any more budget because you forgot to, I don't know, turn off something on Facebook or.
Yeah.
Well, and I like the thought. There's a couple things. So one is being cross-departmental is really important. So again, marketing, like you said, producting between product and marketing. And the other being that every meeting has to have actions out of it. Because I agree, if you all sit there and you have a meeting and you don't have any actions come out of it, then what was the point of the meeting? If there's nothing to do afterwards, it's a waste.
Definitely. And I mean, it doesn't work for every company, obviously, but for me, the producting part is really important when it comes to efficiency, small budget, and so on. Because if you can nail that product-led growth strategy and understand how product can help you and how marketing should also communicate with product, because in the end, marketing has the voice of the customer, right? The insight. So how do you speak a common language? How do you translate the voice of the customer into something actionable for product? And then how product can serve you content to talk with your customer, right? Or a better product, ultimately. This, and then for a company like us, working with physical, we have like a physical product as well, events, teammates that work in the same league, they play in the same league and so on. The network effect concept is super important also. And this comes with product insight. So again, for me, the producting one is really key.
I heard we had a talk with Fisher, and they were talking about how messaging is viewed as part of product. So this kind of goes back to our content conversation. It's viewed as part of marketing, which means it can interrupt or break your product experience. So you guys, it's cool because you're in the market of hopes and dreams, right? Because you're working with people's hopes, people's dreams. They aspire to be great, and they aspire to be seen, and all this good stuff. So if you detach your marketing and your product functions, you're missing out on huge opportunities, because again, the content that you're making as part of marketing make the product better, because again, you're reinforcing and helping people, encourage people on their quest, right? So I think it's incredibly powerful for a whole lot of companies. Yours is a great example of how content adds to the product experience, even for existing users.
Yeah, and that's the easy part for me, because even though I had to fix a few things, really the team did an amazing job on the content, the realization, the brand that they build, and the product as well. So the product is always evolving, obviously. So you're never really satisfied with a product. You always want the next version. But they honestly did a massive job way before I joined. So it makes things easier for me.
Yeah. Well, even the way, just your whole setup is wonderful. How it's team-based. So it's like you get participation from the team. It's a great mission. You add your stats. You're, like you said, this is, again, part of the combination of product and marketing. You get to compare with other people and see how you relate in the industry. Like, everything feeds into itself really well. It's not like a transactional, like I show up and I buy a purse and I leave. Like, it has this great community element, and it all feeds into itself. So I gotta imagine it has to be so fun to be a part of that. On the player side, so what are the most important moments and goals that you're focusing on to try to enhance on the player side? So part of it is stickiness of the app, when it starts to really become valuable, and then part of it is what elements you're trying to celebrate or encourage within the player.
In terms of metrics for the player, or for us as a team on our player stream?
I would say, what moments are you trying to capture from the player? How are you addressing it from the player perspective?
So if you tie that to the product stickiness or the retention, I think it's very important for us that the player feel the stats. And so first we need to create wow or haha moment when they fill their stats, right? And so that's why we have pieces of content like Team of the Week, for example, and that we want to do more in that regard. And that now we've just built a story format where user can also show their skills, their goals, their saves, and then it would be visible by another part of the community. And it's a segmentation and so on. The goal is that it's not that everyone sees everything, but how do you create those moments where player input stats, because it's super important for us. And then the other thing that is super important for us is to invite their teammates, because we also notice that the app is much more enjoyable if you are at least 4 in a team. If you're one person in a team, you can be part of the Team of the Week alone with no one else. Doesn't really make sense. Or you would always be the only one in your team and comparing to what's always like another team in your league or another league. That doesn't really make sense, right? And so I think it also plays with the competition trigger, right? So if you are with your mates, you can see their rank, you can see how they grade, you see their evolution also. So it's all the hyper casual games mechanic, right? Those leaderboards, you evolve in different types of leaderboards, so you're not always at the bottom, even if you're not the best player. And so there are now other features as well, where you can see if someone comes on your profile, like a pro club or something. But for the product stickiness, it's really like filling the stats and invite your teammate. And so it's always a wish for us to improve the content, the harm moments where they do that. How can we push them to do that? And then you have obviously many other metrics that
and it's also not a one-time thing, right? It's like
no.
It's a process they have to follow, and which is again coming back to the observation you made earlier, which is it's professionalization, and part of professionalization is kind of like tracking your progress and keeping it up.
Yeah, and then I think the more you test, the more granular your view on the funnel, on the metrics, or your retention funnel will be. So we know that filling the stats, inviting your teammate is key for the early retention. But then how do we generate more sessions? How do you generate more, or longer session, even more content consumption, if we talk about the story formats? And so it's a little bit the same logic that what we discussed earlier in the podcast. How do you create the synergies then between those things inside of the app?
Yeah.
And there's a big part of education
also even like one of the things. So at Amp, we've worked with a lot of professional marketplace apps where people are trying to get better at a job or achieve IntelliCare as an example, where it's a professional app for marketplace for nurses, and they're able to kind of achieve convenience and flexible work life balance, all the things that they might care about and prioritize. We work with a lot of food delivery and ride-hailing apps. And one of the things we noticed with a lot of ride-hailing apps was to try and motivate drivers, because drivers ultimately are choosing to kind of go out and take a ride. And and there's other things they could be doing with their time that are also enjoyable, watching a Netflix show or spending time with family. And so that incremental extra ride, does it matter? And for some drivers, it's the extra dollar, but for others, it's just sort of like beating their record or maintaining a certain number of hours and discipline. But when those apps start out with, they'll write a life cycle message of like, fill out your next or book your next shift or something. Mm-hmm. And the thing is when drivers, and I used to, when I work with one, we work with one in Singapore, and I used to ask drivers when I would, get a cab, and the thing I would hear over and over and over again is, yeah, I get those messages, but I see like the first one, the second one, the third one. By the time I've seen the third time, just that same static it's just the exact same phrase, book your next shift or whatever. right? Your mind just tunes it out. It's like no longer.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no variance there. So, and I would imagine something is similar. Like if it's just all the time, fill out your stats. It's kind of like
and it's a very good point.
Quality.
It's a very, very good point, and I think it's something that I've actually discussed with James when we had a call like a few months or a week back. Because if we look at our priorities now, obviously this is something that we need to change, because for the stats we have an automated message, after every game that will remind you to do that, because it's like, let's say, a good enough setup that we have without having a CRM team. But then as soon as someone joins us, like, that's priority number one, right? How do you segment your users, and then how do you test different type of message, and then how do you compare the metrics with them, and so on? Because a user that is filling the stats for the first time and one for the 20th time, it doesn't have the same behavior, the same reaction. Some of them, they don't need to be hooked every time by another message because they're already using the app. So it's more a reminder. You need to spend less time on that. But then the early tenure, you need to invest more time in them, or they understand when your users are churning, and then how do you communicate with them before they actually churn. And also adding to that, we have quite specific seasonality. So if you look at most of the mainstream app, you can use the product all the time. We have off seasons. So from, depending on the countries, but from May to September, to some extent or less, you don't have any stats to fill, right? So you cannot get that message anymore. So how do you think out of the box to still create app usage? You know that you cannot expect the same amount of monthly active users, but still there are things to do. It's football. You have many things to do.
Learning and training and everything else. Fascinating.
I used to be a hockey fan, because again, other side of the pond. But I remember it was so sad after playoffs, because you're like, what now? Now I have to wait. So now, but it's a different mindset. You still want to relate with it. You still want to remember the good times. You still want to, remember the key moments and the fun you had, but you're not entering stats, to your point. One example that I thought was really good, there was a food delivery app, and their retention metric was getting someone to enter their credit card information. So they'd hit you with messages that say, put in your credit card. Well, nobody wants to put in their credit card just to put in their credit card. And if you send that message over, it sounds like work. Same thing. Put in your stats. Put in your stats. Put in your stats. Starts to sound like a foreman, a boss, kind of barking down on you to do what you're supposed to, fill out your report card. Yeah. What I like is you touched on a couple things at the beginning. We're like, GoPro is the motivation for a lot of people. And then it's like, well, it's not really, we hear this from a lot of apps too. Why do people use your app? There's one purpose and only one reason, but then we start to talk about, oh, well, there's this. So you just mentioned competition being something huge too. It's not just going pro why you put your stats in, but some people it's playing the game and relating with their. So it's like, you will enter your stats. The food delivery app, you will put your credit card in if you want to order food. Similarly, you guys, someone will put in their stats if they want that teamwork element, or it's not just being, but you have to understand which person has which motivation, which person wants to be discovered in GoPro, and that's why they do it, and which person wants to just razz their buddy on the bus on the way back from the game, right?
Yeah, and you raised something quite interesting, because the word that you mentioned, bossy, I think in the way you receive the message, and actually we shouldn't underestimate the importance of your tone of voice. So a few months back, we were not like using super polite phrasing and so on, but like, let's say regular one, the one that you would see in 99.9% of your pushes. Now we did some tests with one of our interns. So I'm telling you, everyone has an impact. He came with the conviction that you had to change the tone of voice. And so I said, okay, test it. He came with a slang approach and, naming our user specific way and so on. You see a huge impact on your metrics, opening metrics and so on.
Can you tell us a little bit?
I use 3 or 4.
Oh, sorry. I'm curious now. You piqued my curiosity. No, you piqued my curiosity. So can you give us an idea of like what before is and what after was?
I would love to tell you that before we were talking about American football and then proper football, but that's not the case. No, we were having like, so you know that in French you have a polite form of you, right?
Yeah.
So it was not in all the communication, but it's just to image the thinking. So we may have used that or used something, not super personal. And now it's like finding almost a nickname to the guy, like phenomena, like that we translate in French. So with an abbreviation, and then using real slang in order of like how you will do a great game. No, you use something more direct, common, friendly. But it's a test, right? So this one was working well, but then we have multi-sided platform as well, so we need to take into consideration other aspects. So if you talk to kids, you always have the parents, then you have the coaches, then you have the B2B part, you have the brands, you have the clubs, and so you cannot do all the messages like this. But then when it comes to push notification, when you can segment the users, then it makes sense, right? So the tone of voice, to your point, is massively important as well.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear.
Yeah, I use a lot of running apps, and one of the first apps we worked with Aampe was a running app. And I remember when I was learning a lot about this, I just noticed that there was a particular way one of those running apps sent their notifications. And so then I started like doing a little bit of research, and I just like did a search on Twitter for notifications with a couple of different running apps. And it was crazy how many people on Twitter were talking about the way the running apps were communicating. And some were like really upset that the app was sort of aggressively, telling them to like get off the couch and go run. And then some people were really irritated that it was just like this, they're like, my app sounds like, a super passive aggressive mom, like, are you sure you want to go running today? It's like, just tell me to get off the couch, right? They want the high school coach who's like, get out there, do it. They need that form of motivation. And then others just like, we're like, that's in my face. Get out of my face. I don't want that.
You're back to the producting word. So if again, it's key that that you listen to the voice of your customer, right? And then to take your example, do you have a way to segment those users? Do you have a way then to personalize even that level of notification? Because, you're right. We're not expecting all the same tone, the same type of message and so on. And so it's key that you listen to your community. And even though they got a message like that, you still have the possibility to engage with them outside of your app. And so that's something I didn't mention today. And maybe I should, because it's quite new and quite important. Is like when I joined, obviously the target was to grow the app, because the app is your product. But now we have a parallel stream, which is growing your social media community, because in my opinion, it's as important as your app. It's your community, right? So, and you talk about football, so you can grow your off-app community way faster and cheaper than your in-app, work on your product, improve your product, while finding mechanics to convert your off-app community into your in-app community. In the end, your blended CPA decreases a lot. And working on your off-app community gives you also much more proximity with your user, because you can engage like this. There is no formality with the email pushes and then an answer. Like, you just talk. You see people mentioning you jump. We already jump on TikTok live sometimes of someone. So there are a lot of things to do and to learn from when you're off app.
Yeah, absolutely. But that key word is listening. It's just like you have to listen and you have to be actively
and report
listening.
it. And that's actually one that we have. So the voice of the customer, we have a format, and that's what we communicate also internally. And then you have probably always a product and a marketing point of view in the insights or what you communicate. And then what are the outcome of that? How do you make the product evolve? And then how do you improve your communication to answer those points or flag or raise?
So I think you already answered. I was going to wrap up and say if someone was stepping into a growth role or a marketing role similar to yours at a newer app, what would be the biggest, most helpful advice that you would give them? I think you've semi-answered that, but I would love to ask that again, a little bit more focused. So
it's so dependent of the structure and the team, and like I think it would seem silly, but it's probably taking the time to really understand not only your product but the status of your team, the interaction between your team and the other key teams that are, in my opinion, BI, product, design, depending on how the team is set up. And then most of the time it's simplify what already exists. So one thing maybe to add here that I didn't mention before is, like, for me, it's easier to create synergies and to create ownership and so on if you all work in the same direction. And so, again, in my opinion, to avoid working in silo, you need to have one common North Star. And so if we take the business metrics on our side, obviously you always have revenue as a company, but monthly active user is the main metric for everyone in the marketing team, even acquisition. And then you have the building KPIs, and the building KPIs can be specific. And so for me, that was a way of simplifying what was already there, because again, the team has done an amazing job. It was just lacking of structure and maybe prioritization and so on. But so I would take time, strengthen the foundation. That's also something I love. And then put on paper your full funnel. I'm super visual, so I like to have really a view of the funnel and then notice if something doesn't make sense, if you have a lack of consistency. And basically every step in your funnel is a conversion rate that you can improve. So without additional budget, you impact your North Star, your end metric in the funnel. So it's not always a luxury that you have when you join a company, but if you do have it, I would really take time to analyze, and not only the product, the metrics, the synergies between the teams and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good. I like the cross-team focus. So take a step back, cross-team focus, common North Star, and then set up those processes that you've talked about. So I'll give you,
among many others, but yeah, that makes sense.
So when we started recording, you're like, man, I don't think I have enough that I could talk for more than 10 minutes. And here we are over an hour. So I'll wrap it up really quick. Just one final question for you. Are you able to tell us anything? What's next for Tonsor? Anything cool coming out that we should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, we are, as we speak, soft launching England. So, yeah,
that'll be a big
country to come in H2. So yes, we you will probably see the first pieces of communication next Monday. So it's awesome. Really as we speak.
Awesome. Well, very cool.
Thanks a lot for having me. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yep. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody else who tuned in to the Appthropology podcast. We hope you learned something that'll help inspire your own work. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And then go look up Thomas on LinkedIn and connect with him too. All right. That's all for this week. Thanks again, Thomas, and we'll see you next week.